What up, though, Detroit? This is June with Motor City Metrics. Check us out on Bleachers and Speakers on Mondays. Me and Foster, we're going to recap the football game. We're going to talk about Detroit Lions. We're going to give you our perspectives. We're going to break everything down from what we see because we are the fans in the bleachers and we're bringing to you our thoughts and our views to the speakers. So check us out on Mondays at 7 o'clock.
All right. Welcome to another episode of Motor City Metrics here at TigersMLReport.com. I am Rogelio Castillo. Alongside me is Huber, and Chris Brown should be with us momentarily as the Tigers, some breaking news this evening, as the Tigers signed make sure I get this name correct. So I'm going to try this. Let me get the name pronunciation correctly. But Tigers did a move, which I did hear about that was going to come out either this week or some point. There's been talks about it. We got to give major props, first and foremost, to Evan Petzold of the Freep, who kind of indicated this before everybody else did. And I saw that John Heyman somehow got credit for this, and that's totally 100%. That's wrong. Totally wrong. Kenta Maeda. Kenta Maeda is the newest Detroit Tiger, signing a 2-year deal with, I think it was 2 years, $24 million, I believe it was.
Sounds right.
And I'm just going to see if I could get Chris on here and do that. So
Nightingale was saying that there's no bonus, no opt-outs, no nothing, just straight contract.
Which leads me to believe that there's more to come. And I did hear some more stuff that is coming as well down the potentially. So, Josh, good to see you in here. Good evening, everybody. And there's Chris Brown, who joined us. Chris. Muhahaha. You still have the hair thing going, too. That's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, I haven't changed my hair yet.
Yeah.
But,
there is the possibility. Now, Yamamoto is not going to announce anything until after the winter meetings, which will be in 2 weeks in Nashville this year. So, but we did hear some other things coming down the line that could potentially happening next. And as Chris said on his tweet very well, this is, I like what you said, but there's a small chance he ends up being the most important Tigers free agent signing since Pudge Rodriguez. And I believe that. Well, go ahead, Chris.
Well, yeah, there's a small chance. All right. Like it's hard to say that without sounding like it's complete hyperbole, but what the Pudge Rodriguez signing ended up meaning was that the Tigers were open for business, right? They were a team that were serious about signing free agents. And we've talked about this a bunch. The Tigers have never really signed Asian players. You talked about, the small signings in the 90s, but this is a legit signing.
This is the first Japanese pitcher since 2002. It's held out since Nomo.
And you don't want to boil it down to something so simple, but if I were an Asian guy, I might not consider a place unless they've had Asian players in the past. I don't know. Like I think it could end up being bigger than that, but I don't want to overblow it because like Maeda was in Minnesota for the last 3 years and they haven't become, a warehouse of great Asian players. But we talked before about like the Pirates are not a great franchise lately, but they've become kind of the go-to place for Korean guys because they've had several Korean players. So it's just there's just a chance that this could lead to bigger and better things. That's all I meant.
Yeah. No, and go ahead, Uper.
Well, it's interesting. Just to go back to Pudge quick. Another thing, Chris is 100% right. That it signaled they were open for business, but it was also that it was washing off some of the stench of a 43-win season, right? It was just such a sea change of a player of Pudge's ilk at his level wanted to come to Detroit. Just kind of changed everything. There's no doubt about that. Is this going to happen? It's interesting. I think that it helps, right? They wouldn't have put it out there if it was nothing. So I don't think it's a nothing burger at all. But at the same time, if there is a club out there who wants to spend the money and put the right things on the table for Yamamoto, I don't think he'll care that he doesn't have a fellow Asian player when it's all said and done. I would assume they're going to take whatever they think is the best deal for him. But even if it's just a 5% or 10% chance that it gives them a shot to make a move on a 25-year-old potential ace, it's well worth doing. Maeda is the level of pitcher they were probably searching for anyway. So if it's a bonus that he happens to be of Japanese descent, great. If it helps them with another player, but at the end of the day, it's quite a nice move. To me, this really kicks off the offseason much more than a Mark Canha move.
Yeah, there is by the way, that's true. Cameron does point out something very, very important. And this is, I actually saw them during spring training that they already have a Japanese scout with them in the locker room already. So there is already starting to become a presence. But if somebody was asking, who should the Tigers target next? And there's also rumors about trades too. But let me just give you a hint of who I would like the Tigers to go after. They do need a lefty really bad, but maybe somebody like, I don't know, this gentleman right here. Shota
Minaga.
Yep.
Minaga.
What's his nickname?
Oh, yes. Oh, Chris has
pitcher.
The philosopher. Yeah, the philosopher.
Yeah. Yes. It seems like we are far from the only people who've heard this rumor. That there's a lot of smoke that the Tigers are way in on this guy. Now it's not Yamamoto, it's not Ohtani, but this is a good Japanese pitcher. He's a lefty. It's a low 90s fastball, a very good splitter, which is par for the course there.
Yeah, as soon as you said it too, that's what's funny about that.
Yeah, I mean that's what we've heard. I think a lot of people have heard that. And again, that's kind of what we're getting at is if you can make yourself a destination for and I don't want to get too serious, right? But I imagine that for a long time, people in Japan knew Detroit as a bad place because Detroit was not very welcoming. I'm talking about beyond baseball, right?
Culturally.
Yes.
Culturally, in the 1980s, there were some bad things that happened in Detroit aimed at Japan. So it's beyond, I don't want to make too big of a deal of it, but it's a harder shell to crack, I think.
I have an anecdotal story on this. I'll make it quick. In the mid 90s, I'm working at a small school in Upper Michigan called Sumi College. And we had a representative, a gentleman over in Japan who had come to school there in the 60s. He became wealthy. He started sending us some students now and then. We would get about a dozen Japanese students up in the middle of nowhere in the UP every year. And we had to put them through quite the little cultural education to get them up to speed on, how to operate in the Northwoods. But one of the things we heard time and time again is no Detroit. No Detroit. Yeah. That's all they would say to us. They did not want to go to Detroit, or even some of them didn't want to go to Chicago. They purposely came to be in kind of a rural area that they viewed as safe. So I don't know if that's the case anymore, but I mean, it certainly gets at what you're talking about, Chris, so that people were a little afraid of the area at one point.
No, and this stems from a couple of situations that changed it a little bit. First and foremost, in 1985, when the Mazda plant came here, that was with Ford. That was a big thing because it was coming on the heels of an unfortunate situation in 1982 where Vincent Chin, Chinese, who was Chinese American, who died by two automotive workers. And this was something that my dad did not buy. My dad worked at Ford, and he would tell me stories, and they would say certain things and certain racial slurs, and that's what they referred to them. Not my dad, of course, but just that's how it was. Yeah, and they would smash Japanese cars with sledgehammers, and then if the slurs were really bad, and so anyway, go ahead, Chris.
In the 1980s, it was you couldn't have a Japanese car at a Detroit auto plant, right? Like,
correct.
That you were going to get your tire slashed, your windows broken, or something like that. So, again, this is a far bigger geopolitical issue than maybe it needs to be. But if you're growing up in that era, Detroit is not necessarily a place you want to go as a Japanese person. So the Tigers have overcome that. 2 years, 24 million, right?
Yep.
Completely reasonable deal. You need to get 3 WAR out of that, right?
Yeah.
to make that. And Maeda has been a quality pitcher for the last 3-4 years. He's been injured. That's the main concern, right? Is he going to stay healthy? But if you look, I looked up his WAR since 2020. It's basically the same as Michael Wacha, who was one of the guys I wanted them to sign. But Wacha has thrown like 200 more innings. So when Maeda is healthy, he throws strikes, he gets strikeouts, he doesn't walk a ton of guys. He gives up a few more home runs than you'd like. But I've seen some people, speculate maybe just maybe Comerica might help him with that. So yeah, I think it's a perfectly reasonable signing. And again, we're maybe making more of this than we should, but there's more to it than just a traditional free agent signing.
By the way, if anybody, I was going to say
Go ahead.
I was going to say Little Tokyo. Novi is considered Little Tokyo. Fun fact, and it's an increasing population. Yeah, it's because of a Japanese healthcare program that's going out there known as Providence Park.
Huh?
So that's been growing every year, and this is according. This is part of a media study here. Between 2005 and 2011, the city's Japanese population has increased 33%, making it home to the largest Japanese community in Michigan. So, anyways, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just think take off from what Chris was saying. The Tigers' payroll is so low the next 2 years. We always say, how many times has any of us said there's no such thing as a bad 1-year contract? Well, given where the Tigers' payroll is and what Maeda is going to be making, it's pretty hard to shake your head in disgust over a 2-year contract here either, right? Because let's just say it's $12 million a year. $12 million they can afford without any question this year, and I don't think that situation is going to change markedly next year. So it's a completely reasonable contract. Now I'm watching this Imanaga video.
By the way, I love the replay they're doing this. Go ahead. It's cool.
It's kind of cool. He reminds me slightly, and you get dangerous thing. This Japanese guy, and you only compare him to another Japanese guy. But just looking at the left-handedness and the arsenal we got there, I'm looking at Kikuchi, right? You say Kikuchi a little bit?
Yep, Seattle, Toronto. Yeah,
it's the first thing that popped in my mind. That's a good pitcher.
Yeah. He's had trouble with home runs. He's also a big strikeout guy, a lot of walk, or not a lot of walks. Big arm. I think his velocity jumped once he got to the United States. But yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, like we're speculating on the Imanaga thing.
Right.
We don't really know for sure, but yeah, with the Maeda move, I mean, he steps in instantly as their number 2 starter, right? You hope by the end of the year that maybe he's like number 4, but Skubal's going to be the number 1 starter, and Maeda number 2, and then you hope Mize will be number 3, and then you've got Manning, Olsen, and Gibson Long to try to compete for those final 2 spots. And we speculated last week about potential trades, and maybe that'll be what happens. But it's nice to have some depth, because we've seen over the last handful of years that the rotation you enter the year with is rarely the rotation you end the year with. So yeah, spend some money on a quality big league level pitcher, and that's fine. Like, he's going to add 1 to 2 wins to the WAR total, if you will, and a couple more moves like that, and the Tigers are in business. But this is the first, hopefully, of several.
Let's take Imanaga out of the equation just for a second. If they do go after another pitcher, do you think it's the same level, money-wise, skill-wise, history-wise, or do you think it's someone a little more advanced?
Well, I don't know. I would imagine so that this is the 2-year, $24 million deal. I imagine if they sign another free agent pitcher, it's probably a 1-year, $8 to $12 million deal.
So Matt Boyd,
Matt Boyd, Alex Wood, that level of pitcher. But hopefully, I mean, we're all hoping they also make a more substantial investment on a pitcher that they like. And again, we're all speculating Imanaga, but yeah, I don't know. Scott Harris is still a bit of a cipher to me, so I'm guessing there.
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Like I said, we've had some really well connected, like we've had some information that we've been given and what have you, and we've taken advantage of it. But they do need to get another lefty. Yeah, and this was Tyler's 100%. This is where this would make the most sense too. I was thinking too, and I could be off by this, and I'm a little old school, and when it comes to remembering pitchers and what have you, but I look at him as in terms of pitching from the left side, and he reminds me of an old pitcher by the name of, some people might remember him, some people may not, but in a way, kind of reminds me of Jimmy Key, former Blue Jay Yankee
Jimmy
guy.
Key.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys share the same comp, but I look at him like Jimmy Key, except he doesn't. Is in terms of like coming from the side of the third base side or rather the first base side of the rubber, with a little more power. I don't know. What do you guys think? Am I too off base on that?
Obviously, if you pitch to the level of Jimmy Key, we'd be ecstatic.
Yes.
But Jimmy Key would. One thing I remember about him is he would change his arm slot during the game a lot.
Yeah,
he'd come over the top. He'd come from the side. I haven't seen enough of Imanaga to know about that, but sure, it could be a good comp. Why not?
So one of the things that we saw from when we first heard about this, we were looking into Imanaga on Twitter, and there were multiple tweets about his fastball shape, basically the induced vertical break, the IVB, 20 to 22 inches on his fastball, which is very, very, very rare for a lefty who throws in the averages like 93. And I don't know. Who knows if Jimmy Key had that level of fastball ride, but that's one of the things that makes him interesting. And one of the things we pointed out at the beginning of last year was it seemed like that was the only common thread among the Tigers minor leaguers that the Tigers signed, was these pitchers all seemed to have wide on their fastballs. It seemed like something they were into. So I don't know. I mean, maybe that's something to consider, but maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. Like, I imagine if that's the case, if he has this rare ride on his fastball, the Tigers are unlikely to be the only team after him.
Yeah. The Dodgers. We haven't heard the Dodgers do anything as of yet, but it is going to see the Tigers being aggressive this early in free agency, and also, yeah, even like the Yankees haven't. I mean, kind of quiet on the Yankee front too, but yeah, there's bigger things to come. We'd hope, but there's. Yeah, in terms of a bat too, this is where the Tigers are also. We haven't heard too much about a bat yet, but this week will continue to be interesting to see, because there's the talk about getting another pitcher, and also there was another thing too that I was talking to my buddy about this earlier today, and he brought this up. The Tigers need a really good situational reliever too. I mean, if you think about it, a high leverage reliever with experience, they don't really. You could talk about. You could debate whether or not you can bring in like a guy like Alex Vallejo or somebody from the farm, but you really don't have anybody with experience outside of course, Lang. What version of Lang you're going to get. Consistency. I mean, that's where I think they should also. I think next week will be a big tell what's going to happen with the Tigers, even in terms of from a trade front too.
Well, it would be funny if a year after trading away all their middle relievers, if they went out and traded for one. It'd be quite a difference in 12 years, in 12 months.
Yeah, I agree with Tyler. I do like the idea of signing Jordan Hicks, but I think one of the big things of last year was how reliable Jason Foley and Tyler Holton became. That was huge. Like between them, they had like a handful of meltdowns, right? Lang had his really rough period, but those two guys were really steady. But you cannot rely on relievers from a year-to-year basis, no matter how good they are one year.
Right.
It's such a hard job. So yeah, it wouldn't shock me if they go out and get another guy or two, but yeah, I don't know. like I said, I wouldn't hate if they signed Jordan Hicks, but I'm imagining like Ronaldo Lopez got what 3 years and 30 million.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to cost you. It's going to be like 4 years and 50 million for Jordan Hicks.
I'm not saying the Tigers are going to do this, but I'm really interested to see who decides that they have to have Josh Hader and what they're going to pay for that. Because sometimes he's had a couple little instances here where he hasn't looked the same, but then he gets back to his dominant self. I mean, how much are you going to want to invest in that? That's going to be fun to watch.
And Dan Dickerson, who is up on the modern stats as anybody, loves to use Josh Hader as an example of how spin rate doesn't necessarily matter that much, because Josh Hader is in the very bottom of spin rate, and yet he's been very good for 3-4 years now because of other factors. It's extension, it's horizontal release point, like all these other things that matter. Right. But yeah, if I'm a team, I'm not necessarily going to spend a ton of money on him because we've seen him. He had like a month-long meltdown with the Padres after he arrived there.
I mean, he's going to want like 6 years, 120 million, isn't he? You think?
Yeah, I would think.
Yeah.
I can't remember the longest relief contract is usually about 4 years, right? Like Chapman, Jansen. I don't think anybody's ever given a reliever more than 4 years, but it would be interesting to see if he breaks that mold.
Mm-hmm.
The Tigers also bringing back Garrett Hill on a minor league deal, and they're also bringing in, and I didn't realize it was an outfielder, Ryan. What was I going to say, Chris? Go ahead.
Ryan Valade. Yep.
Ryan Valade. So he is, and this is exactly what I was talking about last week, or I talked about this a few times in the minor league podcast, and of course here, the Tigers desperately need outfield help. When I originally saw it on Discord, and shout out to Tigers Turmoil and those guys over there, but they do a really good job over there with getting some news out there. It was one of those things where I was like, oh man, is he another converted infielder and outfielder, and he's had more outfield experience than I first realized. As Chris pointed out too, he is a second round draft pick out of high school, correct, Chris?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like he's from the Oklahoma area, but I don't.
You are correct. You would be correct. Stillwater.
Yeah. Which is that? That's Job or Holiday? They're I don't know.
Yeah, I want to say Job. No, Heritage Hill. He went to Heritage Hill, right?
I don't know.
Joe from Tulsa. I don't know.
No, he went to. Yeah. Well, anyway,
it doesn't really matter. I just you follow these. What happens is you get so into the draft, right? All these guys, where they're from, everything about them, and then they get drafted and they aren't drafted by your team, and you forget about them. And like 90% of them don't become anything, and like the 10% do, and then 3-4 years later, that 90% becomes free agents, like Ryan Valade. And you go, oh yeah, sort of remember him. But yeah, I think he's probably just minor league depth in the outfield. And I said to Raj, I'm like, he's probably out of the system by August. And then Raj said, or next week, and he's right. Like when teams sign guys like this, they
Bly Madras last year.
Yeah, there could be somebody next week who they like more, and suddenly it's like the young man that we interviewed last year he was in the Tampa system.
Oh,
really nice kid.
Now I'm done blanking.
Yeah, I am too, and I feel bad because he's a really nice dude. He was in the Tampa system, came to the Tigers, played outfield for a little bit. He had some tools but couldn't hit, and by August he was gone. And that's just the way it goes, unfortunately, in the upper minors. So
yeah, I feel bad.
I want to say Underwood, but
no. He was a
Witherspoon. There you go, Joe.
Yeah, Witherspoon.
Thank you, Joe.
Grant. Yeah,
Grant
thank
Witherspoon.
you, Joe. Yes, thank you,
Grant. My apologies, my man. If you're watching,
Grant.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Joe with the rescue. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a tough business, man. Like there are a lot of guys who have talent but aren't quite up to snuff to make the major leagues, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because there are like 800 major leaguers. It's so very hard to make the big leagues. So Ryan Valade, I think, talented kid, probably won't affect the Tigers in any way in the next year. But we just start to hear these names around now, guys who join the system.
Yeah, and this is where it's gonna on the weekend too, where it's been pretty much dominated by football. I mean, Michigan beat Ohio State yesterday. I was just gonna.
That wasn't bad.
That
There
wasn't
were some
bad.
good games this weekend.
Yes,
question.
yes. Michigan State has
Really
a
good
new,
game.
Michigan
It's
State has a new head
interesting.
coach, by the way.
Yeah, I hate Jonathan with an A, but he seems like a really good coach, and that's a good hire for Michigan State. And it's always weird, I know that we have quite a few Ohio State fans who also root for the Tigers because, of course, it's geographic.
Yeah, not everybody roots for all the Detroit and Michigan teams in football.
Yeah,
or Michigan State,
Some
and
people look at other teams from other states.
yeah.
Kind of get happy when they
as-
win. It's
I don't
kind
know.
of
I just
Actually,
I
I actually
think
lost.
about-
I actually lost a few followers yesterday because I tweeted out a Michigan picture.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm not immune to being stupid with Michigan stuff, but I have a tremendous amount of respect for Ohio State as a football program. I mean, you're talking a top 5 football program all time, right? Like the amount of talent
Right.
that comes through there is absurd, and that's what makes it so
Right.
much fun. And the Tigers have certainly drafted plenty of players from Ohio State, from Dylan Dingler and Andrew Magno to I don't know, Ron Borquin, maybe.
Ronnie Borquin.
Yeah,
there was a
not great,
picture.
but
I think there's a picture too for the Tigers in the '68 team. Those from Ohio State. Joe Sparma, maybe.
Yeah.
that sounds about right. Sparma seems like an Ohio State.
Chris
Like,
Spielman.
but it is, it always cracks me up because sometimes the final week is always like that interstate rivalries, right? Which not necessarily the best games for in terms of like ranking, right? Like Auburn was unranked and they almost beat Alabama and they lost to Alabama on the stupidest play of all time. And it's very frustrating. But like Washington State, Washington went out in there and won it. Farmageddon, Iowa State and Kansas State. That was a fun game.
That was fun. I watched quite a bit of that.
But yeah, you end up with kind of these forced rivalries like Michigan State and Penn State, which I don't think either of those states would want that as their end of the year rivalry, but that's just kind of the way it goes.
So much football tradition took place this weekend and on Thursday, as a matter of fact.
Yeah,
quite a bit
there
of
was
Thursday tradition of good football games. Really
Egg
entertaining.
Bowl, you got Army and Navy this weekend.
Washington State. Yeah, the Apple Cup.
Oregon State. Yeah.
Washington. And I mean, Washington now improves to 12-0. I mean, they barely eked out a victory over the Washington Cougars. And I know what you're going to say, Uper, and we're going to completely ignore that because, quite frankly, I know what you're going to go with it. And outside of Thursday, I mean, everything else has been pretty good in terms of football. So, yeah. Yeah. You know what?
I just,
go ahead, Chris.
Oh, nothing. It's fun for me to think of baseball players who came from the traditionally football school.
Yes.
Or like baseball players who come from like Oregon State, which is not a big football school, and their coach came to Michigan State because unfortunately Oregon State was left out in the cold, right? Like the Pac-12 is just gone. It's Washington State and Oregon State were the only 2 teams left. But the Oregon State is a hell of a baseball program.
Yes.
They won back-to-back national championships, if I'm not mistaken, right? You had Adley Rutschman. Am I crazy? Yeah. So
Jonah Nickerson.
Former Tigers great Jonah Nickerson. There's a lot of the other Abel kid, not Mick Abel, but there was another Abel who was awesome as a freshman, and they pitched him too much, and it basically ruined him for pro ball, which sucks. But yeah, so it's fun for me to look at college football and also think of like Kansas State. Sean Mania. No, he was Indiana State, wasn't he?
Yeah, Indiana State. Yeah, he was Sycamore. That's
Dom Johnson. Johnson, Tigers outfielder, Kansas State.
Sean Medea went to the same school that Larry Bird did.
There you go. Indiana State.
Terre Haute. Our listener, Detroit Degenerate, we've always said he is a hell of a contributor. He really is. So
I don't know what you're talking. I don't know what you're talking about. I
Go
love
Pack,
Detroit
go, he
Generate.
said.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
saw it.
you know
I
what?
just chose not to acknowledge it.
No, yeah, I went back and listened, and we all thought that the Lions were going to destroy the Packers on Thanksgiving, and that was not the case. The Lions came out and played like absolute garbage.
Yeah, Jordan Love. I mean, Jordan Love looked really good too. I mean, let's not kid ourselves here.
He did. I'm not ready for the Packers to hit on a third consecutive quarterback. That's not right.
Well,
But,
I'll tell you, he looks pretty good on the intermediate routes. He's a little short on a lot of deep balls, but man, he's looking pretty good. Well, he's got a long way to go yet. But I thought Detroit would beat the Packers on Thursday.
This is essentially his rookie year, right? Like this is
first year as a starter.
First year as a starter. And the Lions just look really bad. Turnovers,
no
bad decisions, and
Love had a lot of time to throw. I mean, that was the big thing.
Yeah,
they really weren't in his
the
face
pass
at
rush
all.
has been an issue. So,
by the way, Auburn got the end of that Auburn game. Ooh, the Iron Bowl, by the way. Yeah, that was
like I said, that was the dumbest ending I've seen since the kick six or whatever. But Auburn had a pretty strong baseball program there for a while. That's how we got Casey Mize. A lot of people think the number one target for the Rule 5 draft, Tanner Burns. He was kind of the successor to Casey Mize at Auburn as their Friday night starter.
Yeah,
and he's available. I don't think he would get to the Tigers at the 10th or 11th pick or whatever, but yeah, I don't know. I like to take the other sports and apply them to baseball if possible.
At one point too, I mean, people will forget. Good night, everybody. Enjoy your football talk. Okay, all right. Sorry. I'm sorry. We're talking about other things besides baseball, gentlemen. Jeez, oh, Pete's, folks.
Having a little bit of fun.
That's a little bit of fun. All right. I mean, beyond that, the only other thing I wanted to mention real quick, because I will not be here this week. I'll be out for the week. So I wanted to mention the Spencer Turnbull comments today in Chris McCoskey's article. So if you have,
I missed that.
I do have that here. So some of the things he has talked about. He did an interview with Chris McCoskey, and one of the things, this is the quote: "Even though my time in Detroit may have not ended up the way I've chosen, I'm still forever grateful for my time in the Tigers organization. I'll never take for granted the chance that they took on me when they drafted me as a young 21-year-old junior out of Alabama and gave me the opportunity to make my dreams a reality. Detroit has been always ever known as professional, and this is definitely bittersweet for me. I always will be proud to wear the Old English D. I wish nothing but the best to my former team and will most playing in front of the amazing fans of Detroit," end quote. And he just wants to make sure that he helped. He did say that Turnbull credits Hinch for facilitating that no-hitter he had in Seattle. And this is what he said about AJ Hinch, quote: "Without AJ's support and trust in me, I don't think I would have gotten the results I did when I threw my no-hitter. If it wasn't for AJ trusting me with the changes I requested before the game in Seattle, I really don't believe that my no-hitter would have happened."
Changes he requested before the game.
Yeah, the request was Turnbull had gone to Hinch and requested that Eric Haas catch him that night, and him and Haas had a really good rapport through that season. Yeah. So also he wanted to clear up the misinformation about the health of his career, or his health last season rather, has been, of course, the well-documented stuff, but quote, "Out of respect for my team and the Tigers organization, I did not want to speak publicly nor respond to anything that happened last season. I also want to do everything I could in maintaining my relationship with the club while I still played here. Now I'm no longer the Tigers. I feel it's more appropriate for me to respond." And he said, Turnbull, until now, never revealed the severity of his neck injury. And he said, quote, "I was put on the injured list due to fractured neck and torn ligaments on my C6. The injury first happened when I dodged a line drive in week 2 against Boston." And he going on, he said, "Because scans weren't taken initially, I didn't know the severity of the injury, and I tried to continue to pitch through the pain. But as the pain got worse and my performance started being affected greatly, I requested to get the scans. After we got the scans back and revealed my fractured neck, the pain was reversed and I was placed in the IL. What's interesting about that was when he was asked about his neck injury, because I was there before that, you said he was fine. He said that
Mhm.
the neck didn't affect his pitching performance. So things could have changed.
Well, injury stuff is always a bit iffy in sports because there are teams that think you're soft if you report your actual injuries, right? Like, oh, you got to play through that. But there's also an opportunity to take advantage of that and say, oh, I'm injured, I can't play. That's there've been since the dawn of professional sports, there've been guys who've been accused of being a malingerer. Like, yeah, he should play through that ankle injury. That Turnbull stuff, I hope that's from him. It sounds like agent talk to me. It sounds like what you're supposed to say when somebody else when you're a free agent and you're trying to sign. But whatever, it's right. Like, that's fine. Didn't degrade anybody in Detroit, and he tried to make himself signable, and that's fine. And we'll see where he ends up, and I hope he has some success.
Yeah. And the rest of it does sound the same. Kind of like I said, I'm not going to read the rest of it, but essentially they talked about his big left toenail on his landing foot. Yeah, like I said, it is what it is. And good luck to him wherever it goes. But yeah, if you have the Detroit News subscription, worth the read, if you will. So on that note, but if the Tigers, again, if there's anything that happens this week, we'll be on top of it. We'll let you know. And if you want to join our Discord, again, I'll send the link in our description for the podcast episode that will be up tomorrow. And if there is a show this week, these two will be taking care of it. And I'll be back next week after the GM meetings. We'll have, hopefully, just got to talk to McCoskey, and we'll have him on, see what he says, and we'll keep you posted on anything Tiger related. And of course, you go to tigersmlreport.com, check out our latest, all our articles, all our content there. And of course, if you want to support the podcast, there's a PayPal link in there as well. So on that note, myself, if there's any guys want to add anything before we get out of here?
No, just think about you guys. Good luck tomorrow.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I appreciate 100%. It. Yep. I appreciate it, gentlemen. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Have a good night, everybody.